John, start off, I guess, talking about your relationship with Mr. Hilton. How did you meet him, and how did that kind of progress?
Right. I first met him about 10 years ago. He had responded to a help wanted ad placed in a local newspaper for a telemarketing position. And he came to the office to interview. He had experience working as a telemarketer for other siding companies, so in the same line of work, and he was hired at that point.
And then how did things go? Is that what he did for you the entire time? Was
Correct. All he ever did was office work for the first number of years. Approximately 5 years he worked as a telemarketer. I had a office on Clairmont Rd, and that's primarily what was done there. I had a lot of telemarketers. A lot of them would come and go. It's a high turnover rate. He had a job to do. He did his job. I mean, there wasn't that much else to say about him. And then there was a period of time around 5 years ago where I ceased doing the telemarketing operations in that office building. At that time, he was looking for something else to do. He may have worked for another company for a short while. You know, bear in mind that I've had lots of employees that did this type of work over the years. But when I closed down that operation, he kind of went on his own and would do his own independent telemarketing and leafleting and that type of thing to try and generate business. So he worked in a different capacity, but he did continue to work over the next 5 years and generate business for my company.
But it was strictly an office kind of thing? Did he ever go out and do home?
Strictly in the office, unless maybe he was out possibly handing or putting leaflets on mailboxes, that type of thing. But no, under no circumstances did he ever go to a customer's home or ever work on a customer's property. I'm aware of an article that was published in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yesterday, and there was an interview with one Robin McKinney of Snellville. She told lies. She made misstatements of fact, and basically slandered me and my company in that article. Unfortunately, I was out of town this past week, and I was never contacted before this story was printed. So today I'm trying to correct some of the errors that were made, and also answer questions that the public has about this heartless, vicious murderer, Gary Michael Hilton. So that's why I'm here. I've been talking a lot today, so excuse me if I have to drink some water every now and then.
You go ahead. Tell me about Hilton when he worked for you. For those 10 years, he was telemarketing, some in your office, some out of the office. What kind of guy was he?
Well, going back to what we were just discussing, what was printed in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution was that Gary Michael Hilton had actually performed work at this woman's home, and that is absolutely, unequivocally untrue, period, end of question. He never, ever, as long as he had anything to do with me or my company, performed work of any sort like that on a customer's property. I don't believe he would have even known how to construct a deck or do any other type of carpentry work. So I wanted to clear the air on that first to make sure that the public knows that this person was not visiting my customer's house and putting anyone in danger.
What kind of character was he? Did you ever anything ever unusual about him the whole time he was working?
I would best describe him as being unconventional, in the sense that when I first met him, he was a 50-year-old man. He said he basically had no family. He had a dog, a large dog, and he said that was his only family. He could only work and live in places that would allow him to bring the dog with him because they never left each other. So, you know, I'm a dog lover myself. I've always known dogs, and so I somewhat sympathized with his predicament and helped to accommodate him where he could take his dog to work and do his job, and he did that.
So you ever have problems with him during that time?
No, for the first number of years, I don't really recall any problems at all. I know that he didn't interact well with others on a personal basis, although he was a talkative person on the telephone. In person with strangers, I would notice that he would be awkward and uncomfortable. And I think I could best describe him as somewhat of a loner who didn't really prefer to be around other people all that much. But nothing in his history that would have led you to believe he would be a violent person. Certainly not to the extent of the horrible, vicious crime that he has committed. There's nothing I can point to over this 10-year period. However, I have to back up and go back to the past year, because the past year is when things seemed to change. About a year ago, he was not doing his job. He wasn't working. He was becoming more withdrawn, more difficult to talk to. He complained of being ill quite often. He told other people he was ill, that he even had MS, which I don't believe there was ever any clinical diagnosis of such. I think these were just stories he would tell people, whether real or not. I don't know, but I know that he wasn't working, and he still needed and wanted money to survive. So I helped him out the best I could. But as time passed on into the summer, things were just getting worse, not better. He still wasn't working, and it got to the point where he was demanding money, not just asking for it. Even though at that point I had probably advanced him in the neighborhood of $10,000, he demanded more. It got to the point where I told him that there was to be no more. He wasn't working. I had been discussing this with him for several months now, and he wasn't doing anything about it, and that he was going to have to move on. And at that point, he told me he wanted $10,000, period. He said, "I don't care how you get it, but you better give it to me or else." He said, "I'd take half now and I can get the rest later." But he said it would be the easy thing to do, or else I would pay the price. And he made no mistake, and I could see from the tone of his voice that he was in a state I had never seen him before, and I became very concerned.
Was this summer of 2007 or 6?
2007. That was this past summer.
Just this past summer,
yes.
Not even a year ago.
Not even a year ago, right. Like I said, he started behaving oddly and talking about his illness the first part about a year ago. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, things went on through the summer to the point where it came to a head where he basically threatened to kill me unless I gave him $10,000. And I was very concerned, as I just said. I contacted local police authorities and filed a report there and told them basically what I've just told you. The Fulton County Police told me that based on what I told them, and I also let them listen to several voicemails that he had left on my cell phone that clearly demonstrated his unpredictable state. I let them listen to that. They heard my story. I told them I seriously thought this man was a danger, that people may be at risk. I may well be at risk. And at the end of my interview there, they basically told me that all they could do was fill out a report for harassing phone calls. And then they gave me a pamphlet about a victim's assistance center I could visit. I was also told that a detective would be contacting me to follow up after reading the report. Well, no one ever called back. No one ever followed up. So I was basically left to my own devices. And that very day that I contacted the authorities, I called Hilton back. He wouldn't accept the call. He just let it go to voicemail. And I let him know that I had been in contact with the police. And he had previously threatened me that if I went to the police, he would take action. So when that happened, I basically had to get family members out of the house, and I armed myself and remained armed 24/7 from that day forward until he was captured. And I took extra security measures around my house. This is how seriously I took his threats. And as the days passed, and I heard nothing from him, saw nothing of him, and had no idea of his whereabouts, I guess my comfort level grew a little bit, but I still remained looking over my shoulder until the day he was captured.
I understand you took out a restraining order as well?
No, I did not. I never took out a restraining order. They told me I couldn't do that at the police station that day. And here again, they told me to wait on a detective to call, but they were quite honest and saying there's really nothing we can do for you.
Except file the harassing phone calls charge.
Right.
Did that ever go through?
File for harassing phone calls? No. No, there was nothing that ever happened after that visit.
So that, did they suggest you take out a report or file the charges, or was that up to them?
They didn't really make that clear, but I knew in my own mind taking out some sort of charge for harassing phone calls would be simply just a waste of time. They wouldn't do anything about it, and clearly no one ever did anything about it. So here again, I did what I felt I needed to do to protect myself, and waited out and see if he showed up, and he did not.
And what month was that, do you think?
This was the beginning of September.
September of September 2007. Okay, so you didn't hear from him after that until?
That's correct.
Thursday, last week.
I had absolutely no contact with him after that date that I filed the police report. The next thing I knew was on January the 3rd, I woke up and for some reason turned on CNN late in the morning, which I typically don't do. It's almost as though it was a divine intervention, because as soon as I turned on the television, the news story appeared that described this monster in detail. And when they mentioned the name of the dog, I believe they said Dandy, but I knew that was, I believe they said Randy, and I knew that was very similar to the name Dandy. All the pieces came together, and my heart literally sank to my stomach, and I thought, oh my God, this must be Gary. So I immediately contacted the authorities. I had to look up their number in Union County. I called the sheriff of Union County first and told them that I knew who this person of interest is. I was 99.9% certain that I had the information they needed, and they were very happy to hear from me. So I was able to give them his full name. I gave them the description of his vehicle. I gave them the tag number, and everything else I could think of. I gave them all that information. Shortly after that phone call, I believe the GBI started calling me within a few minutes, and they seemed very appreciative of the information I was giving them, and wanted to know if it'd be okay to continue to contact me. I said, of course. They said, if you hear anything else or you think of anything else, let us know. So I tried to salvage what I had left of the day. I was quite disturbed by what I was hearing. Of course, at this point, he was still just a person they wanted to take in for questioning. Well, about 4 or 5 hours later in that afternoon, I was out on business, and I got a phone call, and the person on the other end just started talking, and after just a few seconds, to my shock, I realized it was Hilton. Excuse me for just a second. Drink of water in my mouth is very dry.
So he calls you that same day at Hilton. You call the authorities later that day, he calls you. So you called them in the morning. About what time did he call you?
Like I said, it was about 4 or 5 hours later. I'm thinking I called the authorities around 11 in the morning, and it must have been sometime around 4 o'clock when I got his phone call. When he called me, he seemed very calm. He acted as though nothing had happened, nothing was wrong. He told me that he was ready to come back to work, that he had cleared his mind, that he felt good for the first time in a long time. And I was listening to this, and here again I was still in a state of shock, but I think I did my best to retain my composure and not let on to him that I had already turned him into authorities.
Now, all this time, they've already put his picture out. It's well known, publicized everywhere that authorities want to talk to him.
I believe so. Here again, I wasn't watching I was in my vehicle in the afternoon, so I wasn't really abreast of what was going on other than the radio news.
Mm-hmm.
But right, I believe at that point they had already published his name, and from the information I'd given them earlier in the morning. So while he was talking to me, he apologized for his past behavior, since he left on the terms that I described, and he said he had been sick and that now he was well and that everything was going to be fine, and said he would like to come back to work, and he said that he had no money, he was desperate for money, and that he would need some money to start working again. So I remained calm, and I pretended as though I was actually happy to hear from him, and that he would be welcome back to work, and that I would be willing to advance him $800 to get started. So I told him I would leave a check for him at the office on Clairmont Rd. We discussed where I would leave it, on the back deck under a sundial. And he told me he was extremely grateful for that, and that I wouldn't regret it, and that he would come by to get it sometime Friday afternoon, Friday evening, or possibly Saturday morning. He told me after he got that money, he would be able to go get a disposable cell phone, and then he would be able to contact me. I asked if there was any way I'd be able to contact him in the meantime, and he said no, absolutely not, but that he would be in touch with me as soon as he possibly could. And then he hung up. That was the end of that conversation. And
how long a conversation?
I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Like I said, it was so startling to me.
I was going to say, what was your reaction when he called? I guess you never would have expected that in a million years.
Oh, of course not. That was the last thing I was expecting. And here again, I'd been fielding a lot of phone calls all afternoon from the GBI and other law enforcement agencies. Just that, whatever questions they might have, I told them they could call me anytime, and they all had my cell phone number. So, like I said, there was a lot going on in my mind, and of course, I wanted to do everything I could to see that he was captured. Even though at the time, I guess there's a part of me that didn't want to believe that someone I knew could commit such a heartless, vicious murder as was committed. But on the other hand, I also knew what I'd been through for the past year, and I knew that there was certainly the potential that he could have done something bad. So I didn't think twice. I, of course, immediately called the GBI as soon as I could locate their phone numbers, and I gave them the number of the payphone that he had called me from. And I told them of my plan to bring him to Atlanta, to the office, to get the check. And then I discussed with the GBI agents, what I should do next, whether I should actually go to the office, should I, leave a check for him, or what should I do? I, of course, had no idea what to do at this point. They advised me not to go anywhere near the office. They told me that the entire area would be put under surveillance, and they would just hope that he showed up there if they weren't able to capture him any sooner. So at that point, I realized if he did go there and get that, or look for that check, and if he somehow managed to elude the authorities, because he was a smart person, he knew how the police operated, and I thought there was only a chance he might be able to get to the office, and without being apprehended. And I also thought that if he did that, and he drove all the way to Atlanta, and there was no check waiting for him, that I'd be the next one on his list. So here again, I had to evacuate my house, and I stayed behind, and I literally stayed up all night with an assault rifle, waiting to see if he were going to show up.
So you were putting yourself at risk by doing this?
Well, I suppose in hindsight I was, but quite honestly, at the time, that really wasn't even a thought. I mean, I didn't. I wouldn't let fear get in the way of doing the right thing. I didn't have to think twice about it.
This whole time you're going through this, are you thinking this is really strange? I mean, or are you just kind of reacting to everything?
I still feel that as we sit here. I still feel sick to my stomach, thinking about this gruesome crime, and that I actually knew this monster that has committed it. It makes me sick to my stomach, and I felt that way since the very moment I contacted the authorities and identified him, and it continues to this day. And as more details come out about possibly other crimes, it just makes me feel even more sick. I just hope that I stopped him. Excuse me.
My next question, do you feel some satisfaction in knowing at least that you got the police on the right trail and did?
Well, I would certainly like to think so. I mean, from the agents that I've talked to, the people that have profiled criminals of this type have all told me the same thing, that apparently once they start this type of murderous crime spree, there's really no stopping them until they're apprehended. So yes, I certainly do feel some satisfaction at the end of the day that he's never to be released to harm the public again, but I also think about the victims, and that's what chokes me up. Of course, I wish there was something I could have done sooner, but I just don't believe there was.
So those 10 years you knew him, everything, he was an odd character, but nothing out of the ordinary until that day in September when things just turned sour. And but I guess even at that point, did you think? I guess you still never, even at that point when he's being threatening, didn't think that he would do something like what he's accused of now.
Well, that's correct, but like I said, the past year he really had changed quite a bit, and he said a lot of things. He did a lot of talking and didn't do much listening. So I just thinking of the things he said along the way and just the way he acted, I knew he was a danger, and I did what I could, all that I thought I could, to try and bring him to the attention of the police. But apparently there was nothing they could do about it.
What do you think changed him?
That's a good question. I wish I knew. One thing that I know he did, as I described earlier, as I discussed earlier, he complained of illness, and I know he started taking prescription drugs, Ritalin in particular, I think in large doses, because there were times he would call and his speech would be so fast and furious I could barely understand what he was saying. It was like he had just had 30 cups of coffee to drink. He was also taking some other medicines I'm not familiar with. And I know at one point he told me that he really needed these medicines because when he stopped taking them, the demons came back. And in this type of language I'd never heard from him before. I'm not suggesting that these particular drugs changed him, but that's the only factor I can identify that seemed to change over the years that I knew him. And
that's when the behavior changed anyway. Was when he got on these medications?
Yes, around that time. Maybe shortly before, maybe shortly after. I can't pinpoint the dates because here again, I didn't generally see this monster on a daily basis. I rarely saw him in person over the past several years, maybe not more than once a month or so, if that. Most of our dealings would be by telephone. And so I didn't see his physical change, although I remember at one point seeing him with teeth missing, which he had never had that issue before. I believe he told me one of his crowns or a bridge or some dental work had just come loose and fallen out, and he told me that another tooth was decayed, or he had a problem with it, so he told me he actually took a pair of pliers and pulled it out, and he seemed to delight in the fact that his appearance would actually scare people. Now here again, this is the type of conversation and behavior that I'd never seen before that appeared this summer.
That's quite a change.
Yes.
And this was all happening at once then, the medications and then this strange behavior and wanting to look scary and the demon talk.
It seemed to progress right from the first of the year on, but really seemed to accelerate into the summer.
Started strange and then just got progressively stranger. Wow.
Correct. Yes, that's true.
Wow. Now, did you literally, I guess once this demand for money came up, that's when you just told him, I'm not giving you money and we're separating ways, or did you fire him, or how did that come about?
Well, by telling him that I was not going to give him any more money, that basically had the same effect of all the above.
Terminating your relationship.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And his reaction was threatening.
Yes. Yes, there was no question about that. So, like I said, I became very concerned at that point.
And so you spent the last, since September, quite frightened of him then.
Well, I don't know if frightened's the right word. Concerned more so about family than myself. But I realized that he was a threat. There was no doubt about that. How severe a threat, no one knew. And I did everything, I think, humanly possible to find out.
Do you think there was anywhere along the line that others dropped the ball?
Well, I can't say that at this point. When I went to local authorities after he threatened my life, they basically said, well, be his word against your word, because he wasn't dumb enough to actually leave a threat like that on a recording. He wouldn't do that. He would dance around it and play with words even on the recordings. But I think at one point he even says on the voicemail that he's not stupid enough to leave a threat. So I understand that made it difficult for the authorities. I'm not necessarily blaming them for what happened, but I just want everyone to know that I had been to the police. I had told them that this man was dangerous and wanted to see if anything could be done about it. And obviously nothing was.
So you attempted then to warn people, and then later on did all you could to try to capture him. And it appears that he was on his way to the office to get that money when he was actually seen and captured.
Well, that's the direct path he would be taking from coming 400 South to my office on Clairmont Rd. Yes, you would travel down 285 and get off at Ashford Dunwoody Road, and you would pass right by that gas station where he was apprehended. So yes, I certainly believe that's what brought him all the way from North Georgia back to Atlanta. Was he was maybe a mile and a half away from my office, and it was Friday night, just like he told me. That's when he would be coming.
Called you from that huddle house, is that it?
I understand it's a huddle house. Yes. Yes. When
I can't think of anything else to ask unless there's something we're missing. This is quite an unbelievable story.
Yeah, it's all unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're right. I'd never in my wildest dreams.
I don't know. Has your, in any way other than this one article, of course, has your work been taking any kind of backlash, do you feel like? I mean, are others saying,
yes,
why did
yes.
you ever hire this guy, that sort of thing?
Yes. I mean, I think clearly because of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article that was published yesterday, and it was also followed up on by WSB-TV in their interviews. They actually put this woman, this McKinney, Robin McKinney, on television, publishing her lies across the state. So, yes, it certainly has damaged my reputation, my business's reputation. And
other than that, has there been, other than her thing, has there been other?
I've gotten emails from people that said that I would never do business in their neighborhood again, and accused me of somehow being involved with these murders. And it's, I can only shake my head and believe that these people are just simply ignorant of the facts. They don't know what happened, and they were misled by the Journal-Constitution. But that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, to set the record straight.
So just purely because he worked for you at one time, people are...
Well, right, and like I said, and the fact that this woman actually said that he worked on her property, which is ridiculous and absolutely untrue.
Yeah.
Correct.